Check out BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard, you already do great coverage on the Patriots. Again, it's $50 for the year. All right, let's talk about depth. So Mike Vrabel mentioned it over the weekend. I mentioned it earlier, saying, hey, look, we don't have a lot of great depth. What'd you think of the comment? And did you think that it was because some people, I guess, took it as a shot to Elliott Wolf? What'd you make of it all?
Of course, because nobody can say anything around here without it being a shot at somebody. A few things. I had a few thoughts. Number one, it's the truth. How long have we been talking about this? I mean, we talked about it ad nauseum last year. That's why after, and we'll get to this point in a second, but after the, sort of everything was wrapped up with the Minnesota Vikings joint practices. They had two of them out in Minnesota. The preseason game where they did not show very well in the preseason game. And after that was when I was like, all right, I was at 11 wins. I'm going to 9 wins because there's zero depth on this team. And if they sustain any major injuries at certain spots, they're completely screwed. Guess what? They didn't really have any major injuries, never had to put a starter on season-ending IR, and in the luckiest season I've ever seen from an NFL team, and it wasn't an issue. The depth this year, it's better. It's not all that much better, and so to me, number one, Vrabel was just telling the truth. He was being honest. I mean, they got their butts, the backup offensive line, which is just horrendous. And we've been talking about it all training camp. I mean, from Caleb Lomu's a turnstile. I mean, he's not horrible. He's been very inconsistent. And he's not ready for prime time. That's nothing against him. I would definitely draft him again because I think you need to train these guys for a year and then he'll be ready, just like Campbell and Jared Wilson are this year, their second year. Mekhi Butler having to play at left guard is terrible. They have an undrafted free agent at center along with some other people. And then right guard, they have James Hudson, who was bad at tackle. They moved him into guard, and he was horrendous the other night. He's been horrendous in camp. And right tackle is Marcus Bryant, who has actually probably been the best guy all of camp, and he gets hurt. And then you go to Crownover, who's like a 7th-round pick, shows promise, but he's a 7th-round pick and a rookie. So their depth there is terrible. Their depth on the defensive line has been terrible. So he was just being honest. Number two, I think part of it was just kind of a motivation thing. I think he wanted to kick the team in the butt because you're getting to that point now because they started early because the season starts so early for them on a Wednesday. They've been going at it for a while. Now you're done with the joint practice and the second preseason game, and now you're pretty much just playing out the spring, getting ready for the regular season. And when they come back on August 31st, it's go time. Everyone's going to understand the stakes, what's going on. The lights are coming, all that stuff. Okay. But this week, a little bit tough to motivate people. So I think they wanted to kick them in the butt a little bit. So I thought Vrabel wanted to do that. And the other part, Nick, I think if you look at this in relation to the Minnesota joint practice last year, if you remember, not that I got it from anybody in the organization, but when I was like, man, this team has no depth. They got their butts whooped out there, especially on the line of scrimmage, especially the offensive line. And I came back and I was like, well, I'm dialing back because of the lack of depth. I know, but there was a lot of talk, I think, from inside the building about people need to hold their horses. Like this is a long-term rebuild. They tamped down expectations coming out of Minnesota. Wouldn't you know? 2 joint practices with the Eagles and a preseason game. And Mike Vrabel, instead of just doing it in the background, he comes out and says, we don't have a lot of depth. And to me, this was, again, them tamping down expectations, especially coming off a very surprising Super Bowl run. I think if the Patriots went 9-8, missed the playoffs, or lost in the first round, I don't think Vrabel says any of that. But because they went 14-3 and went to the Super Bowl and people's expectations are through the roof, I think he came out and just tamped down expectations a bit to just be like, things really haven't changed. We're still in the middle of a rebuild, and people just need to chill out. That, if we don't make it to the Super Bowl, it's not some epic failure. So I think it's multifaceted, and I think Vrabel was right to say it. It's a scorching sports summer, and you can make all your picks on Prize Picks. Women's basketball and baseball are heating up, and every football preseason game kicks off this month on Prize Picks. And with big tennis slams and big golf tournaments, the big season ender this weekend, there's no better place for all your summer sports picks than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports pick app. The football preseason is here, and you can run your game on Prize Picks. We've got star players on new teams and a rookie class ready to hit. I've been making my preseason picks, a little hit and miss. Didn't like Eli Raridan not playing the other night, Cattle's boy, but what have you. I am definitely going to have some fun with this last preseason game. I don't know, for some reason, I find these ridiculous preseason games more fun. It actually keeps you interested. So I will be doing that again for Thursday's game against the Browns. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports pick app.
I do too. I mean, I think he was absolutely being honest. I did not take it as a shot to Elliott Wolf in any kind of way. I mean, Mike Vrabel we've talked about this now for 2 years. He's the guy. He's the guy that's making the final decisions on pretty much all of these moves, or most of these moves. He is setting forth the philosophy. He is giving the front office the types of players that he wants on this football team, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about it. So I know a lot of people think, he was talking about the 2024 NFL draft. Really? One draft? You think Vrabel believes that the depth of this team would have changed completely if the 2024 draft was better? Of course not. We also have to look at this and say, this year's draft, and I've said this from the very beginning of what they did, right? I've said this since late April. This year's draft was more about 2027 than it was about 2026.
Yep.
You're not bringing in a lot of guys who are going to make an impact immediately. You hope Gabe Akis would be that guy, but then he had the camp that he had. He's been more down than up. So you kind of relax your expectations with him as well. And then you look at the fact that there's a reason why a lot of the free agents they've signed have been on short-term deals. These guys are older, and you've got to stay healthy. Carlton Davis and Robert Spillane and Morgan Moses, these guys are closer to hole 18 than hole 9 in their NFL careers. So, it does take time to try to build this. And I think people kind of overlook, and Mike Reese wrote about this recently. I thought Reese did a great job, but I think people overlook how much turnover there was this offseason, not just last offseason, but this offseason. You've had so many different changes because the roster sucked so bad at the end of 2024. So I just think he's being honest. Like, I don't think Vrabel's telling us that we can't compete. I don't think he's saying that we're not going to be a good football team if we're healthy. I don't think he's saying any of that. I think he's telling us, hey, look, the safety net isn't a big safety net. We don't have a lot of insurance on this roster, folks. And if we lose 3 or 4 guys, that's going to be critical for us in a bad way. So that's what I think. I think he's just being as transparent as he can be. And it's funny, do you want the Bill Belichick's who got ripped from pillar to post because he said nothing? Or do you want Mike Vrabel when he actually says something, people make a big deal out of it as well. So, pick your poison.
One thing I did want to mention on the depth thing, just to get this on the record, because I've heard some people scoff at this, because I think there's some people who just love to hate Elliott Wolf for whatever reason. And certainly he has a part of this, and this 2024 draft has something to do with this. But Belichick absolutely has something to do with this. Yes. And I'm not saying it's the biggest percentage or anything like that, but you just look at it from this perspective that when the new regime came in, and yes, the Mayo Wolf thing was bad. They didn't get anything really out of that draft other than Drake May, and that hurts your depth. Absolutely. 100%. There could be reason for that, could not be, what have you. But because things were so bad under Bill in the final years, when Vrabel and company came in, they had to spend a lot in terms of money and draft capital just to get starters to bring this team up to like a 500 competitive level. I mean, we're talking about the A.J. Brown, Dobbs, Will Campbell, Elijah Vera Tucker, Wilson, Moses, Milton Williams, Landry, Draymond Jones, Robert Spillane. Why did I put Carlton Davis, Kevin Byard? You could even put Mac Hollins. They needed to import a number 4, wide receiver because they didn't have that. Lomu and Akis this year as well. So, like they had to spend so much capital just to get the starting lineup competitive. They didn't have any left over to address the depth, and all you can hope for is, you draft and plug and play and hope these guys can play and bring up the depth. And so I just wanted to say that Belichick absolutely had something to do with this. And yes, they've had 3 drafts since Bill, but they started at a deficit. They had to catch up, and that has to do with Bill. So I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and another part of that is, let's be honest, this year's draft class, the 2026 draft class, was not seen as a great class. So it's, the likelihood of you picking guys or finding guys that could make that immediate impact, especially when you went to the Super Bowl and you're drafting towards the end of the rounds, that's less likely in a draft like that. Next year's draft is supposed to be great, so we'll see.
Make sure to subscribe to our new channel, Patriots Newsfeed on CLNS, giving you clips, behind-the-scenes footage, and much more. And as always, keep it here, our Patriots on CLNS, for our full podcast videos.